So imagine breaking your femur in half.
Oh, wow. Brutal.
Right. I mean, it is a devastating, violent injury. It's literally the thickest bone in your body.
Yeah, it takes a massive amount of force to snap a femur.
Exactly. Yet if a doctor simply sets that bone back in place, something totally unfathomable happens. Like over the next few weeks, without you consciously directing a single thing, these microscopic builder cells, called osteoblasts, will migrate to the fracture.
Right. They just know where to go.
Yeah. They lay down new collagen, they weave in calcium and phosphate, and they literally knit that solid bone back together. And often, the repaired section is structurally denser than it was before the break.
Which is incredible when you really think about it.
It is. You are, for all intents and purposes, a walking, miraculous, self-healing machine. I mean, you catch a virus, your immune system synthesizes custom antibodies to hunt it down. You cut your hand, a scab forms, and new skin just generates to seal the breach.
The baseline expectation we have of the human body is just profound resilience. We walk around, assuming that if we take damage, our internal systems will automatically repair it.
Right. Which brings us to the ultimate biological paradox. And it's the whole reason we're opening up this specific stack of research today.
Yeah, the big question.
Because if your body is capable of perfectly sealing a laceration, or fusing a shattered femur, or neutralizing some complex respiratory virus, why doesn't it just keep doing that forever?
Right.
Like, why do we get wrinkles? Why do our joints inevitably start to ache? Why do we age at all?
It is arguably the oldest question in human history. I mean, for millennia, the answers were philosophical or religious. But looking through the source material, we're dealing with something entirely concrete today.
Yeah, the actual biology.
Exactly. We're looking at the literal microscopic mechanics of degradation.
So welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a massive stack of notes on the biological mechanics and evolution of aging.
It's a heavy stack, too.
Oh, it really is. We have evolutionary biology theories, we have clinical observations, and we have the deeply complex cellular mechanics of what is happening inside you, the listener, right this second.
Yeah, right now.
So the mission for today is to synthesize all of this. We want to map out the hidden war taking place inside your cells and answer that fundamental question. Why do we fall apart?
And, to even begin answering that, we have to completely dismantle the conventional understanding of aging.
What do you mean by that?
Well, most people treat aging like a destination. Like a phase of life you suddenly enter when you turn 65 and start getting a senior discount.
Right, like flipping a switch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the biological premise of everything we are looking at today dictates that aging is not an eventuality. Aging begins, the absolute millisecond life begins.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because calling a newborn baby aging feels like a pretty wild paradigm shift.
It really does.
Are you saying a 10-year-old playing on a playground is actively experiencing the mechanics of aging?
From a cellular perspective, yes, absolutely. To understand the mechanism, we really have to zoom out and look at the sheer scale of the organism. You are not a single monolithic entity.
Right, you're made of parts.
You are a highly organized collective of approximately 37 trillion individual cells.
37 trillion. It's a number so vast, the human brain physically struggles to even visualize it.
Yeah, it's incomprehensible.
Like, if every cell were a single person, your body would contain thousands of times the entire population of Earth, all contained within the barrier of your skin.
And every single one of those 37 trillion units is essentially a staggering, highly complex factory.
A factory,
Yeah. Inside these factories, you have a nucleus acting as the central command. You have ribosomes acting as, 3D printers churning out proteins. And you have mitochondria acting as power plants.
There's literally an industrial city in there.
Exactly. And just to keep you alive, these factories have to perform thousands of simultaneous chemical reactions. They're generating energy, transporting nutrients, packaging waste, communicating with neighboring factories. Wow.
And constantly patching up internal structural damage.
So if we look at a 20-year-old body, we're basically looking at a freshly built, state-of-the-art industrial complex where all 37 trillion factories are operating in perfect unison.
Yeah, the system is operating at its absolute peak efficiency at that age. The cell membranes are flexible, the communication lines are perfectly clear, and the internal power plants are running clean.
But staying alive, the mere act of existing comes with a cost.
It always does.
The research breaks the damage down into two distinct categories. The first is external damage, which is, highly intuitive. Sunlight hits your skin. And the ultraviolet radiation physically breaks the bonds in your DNA.
Right. UV damage is a classic example.
Or you inhale urban pollution or cigarette smoke, introducing these microscopic toxins that your cells have to neutralize. You're bombarded by viruses and bacteria trying to hijack your factories.
But the sources highlight something incredibly counterintuitive here.
Yeah, this part blew my mind.
Right. Even if you completely eliminated the outside world, you would still age. So let's say you placed a human in a completely sterile, climate-controlled, radiation-proof, perfectly oxygenated bubble from the exact moment they were born.
They're totally safe from the environment.
Right. Their body would still eventually break down because of the internal damage. It's like, think about a high-performance sports car.
Okay, sports car.
You can buy it, park it in a pristine garage, and never take it out into the rain or snow. But if you turn the engine on and just leave it idling...
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah, the heat, the internal friction, the vibration of the pistons, the very act of the engine doing what it was built to do will eventually destroy the engine.
That's a great analogy. And the biological equivalent of that internal friction is happening inside your cells every microsecond.
Because we need energy.
Exactly.
Cool.
As we mentioned, your cells have to generate energy to keep you functioning. They do this by metabolizing glucose and oxygen inside those power plants, the mitochondria. But the chemical reaction required to produce biological energy, ATP, is highly volatile. As a natural byproduct of creating energy, the mitochondria spit out harmful, unstable molecules.
Yeah, the sources refer to these as reactive oxygen species. But what does that actually mean? Because I'm picturing them as the toxic exhaust fumes of the cellular engine. But how do they actually cause damage?
So to get to the bottom of that, we have to look at the chemistry for a second.
Okay, let's do it.
A reactive oxygen species, or ROS, is an oxygen molecule that is missing an electron.
Missing an electron, got it.
And in chemistry, electrons really like to be in pairs. Because this molecule has an unpaired electron, it becomes highly unstable or, reactive.
Hence the name.
Right. It desperately wants to find another electron to stabilize itself. So it basically bounces around the inside of your cell like a microscopic wrecking ball, violently ripping electrons away from anything it touches.
Wow, so it's essentially a chemical thief stealing parts from the factory.
Yeah, and the theft causes massive structural failure. We call this process oxidation.
Oxidation,
Okay. If an ROS molecule bumps into your cell membrane, it steals an electron from the lipids, which degrades the structural integrity of the cell wall. If it bumps into a protein, it warps the protein's shape so it can't do its job.
And it gets worse, right?
Much worse. Most dangerously, if it bounces into the nucleus, it can physically sever a strand of your DNA.
Just snap it.
Yeah. The profound paradox here is that the exact same oxygen-based metabolism that gives you the energy to think and breathe and move is simultaneously generating the volatile molecules that are tearing you apart from the inside out.
Which raises an immediate glaring question.
Go for it.
If my body is experiencing this level of internal violence every single second, if these chemical wrecking balls are ripping apart my DNA and cell walls just because I'm breathing, why don't I just deteriorate into a pile of dust by the time I'm 25?
Because the biological system evolved to anticipate this exact degradation. We have a countermeasure.
Right, we don't just sit there and take it.
Exactly. The body deploys an incredibly sophisticated, relentless array of repair mechanisms.
And this brings us to the city maintenance problem detailed in the sources. To really grasp this, I want you to picture your body not just as a collection of factories, but as a sprawling, massive, hyper-dense metropolis.
A huge city.
Every single day in this city, infrastructure fails. Heavy traffic cracks the asphalt. High winds damage the power lines. Water pressure blows out underground pipes.
And in the cellular city, you have specialized workers whose entire existence is dedicated to fixing these daily catastrophes.
Who are these workers?
Well, you have DNA repair enzymes acting as molecular engineers. When an ROS molecule breaks a strand of DNA, these enzymes instantly rush to the site, cut out the damaged section, and stitch in new genetic material.
Wow.
We are talking about millions of DNA lesions being repaired in a single cell every single day.
Aliens, every day.
In every cell. You also have immune cells like macrophages acting as a highly aggressive waste management team. They literally swallow up and dissolve dead or irreparably damaged cells.
So they're the garbage trucks.
Basically, yeah. And you have stem cells acting as infinite reservoirs of fresh construction materials, replacing worn-out tissue in places like your skin and stomach lining.
So in a young body, these city workers are operating at lightning speed. A pothole appears on Main Street, and the crew fills it before the next car even arrives.
Perfect efficiency.
Right. A pipe bursts, and it is patched before a single drop of water hits the floor.
The sheer speed and volume of the repair is astonishing. But we run into a mathematical inevitability here.
Right, the catch.
Always a catch. No physical system in the universe is 100% perfectly efficient. Even the most highly evolved biological repair system leaves a margin of error.
Okay.
Let's look at the numbers. Let's assume your cellular maintenance crews are extraordinarily effective. Let's say they successfully fix 99.999% of all the daily damage that occurs in your body.
I mean, on a human scale, 99.999% sounds like utter perfection. If you got that on a test, you wouldn't even think about the fraction you missed.
But that tiny fraction of a percent is the entire basis of human aging.
Wait, really? Just
Yeah,
that tiny fraction?
Yes, because that 0.001% of unrepaired damage does not vanish. It is left behind in the tissue.
Oh, so it's like a microscopic smudge on a window, or a single tiny crack left in the sidewalk of the city.
Exactly. And on day one, or even year one, a 0.001% margin of leftover damage is completely imperceptible. Your city functions perfectly.
Sure.
But biological damage compounds. It is a compounding interest of microscopic structural failure. Over 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, that imperceptible daily deficit piles up.
Oh, man. So the pipes aren't just springing leaks anymore. They are fundamentally rusted through. The roads are chronically uneven. The foundations of the buildings are sagging.
That's exactly it.
And you can actually feel this compounding damage in your own life. Think about how you experience physical stress at age 15. You could twist your ankle in a basketball game, sleep it off, and play again 2 days later.
Oh, to be young again?
Right. You could pull an all-nighter studying, drink a terrible energy drink, and take a final exam the next morning feeling sharp. Now think about how your body handles that exact same lack of sleep or joint stress decades later.
The physical space is the same. It is the exact same city. But the accumulated, unrepaired infrastructure damage has fundamentally altered how the city absorbs stress.
It just can't bounce back.
The maintenance crews are no longer just fixing the daily wear and tear. They are completely overwhelmed by a 50-year backlog of microscopic failures.
Okay, so if the workers are utterly overwhelmed and constantly leaving behind this compounding damage, the instructions they're using to actually do the repairs must also be getting compromised.
Yes, the instructions degrade too.
The blueprints are getting smudged, and the sources point to this as a massive turning point in the aging process, the degradation of DNA and the mechanics of telomeres.
Right, so DNA is the foundational instruction manual for every single protein and structure in your body. Every time a cell divides to create a new cell, which has to happen constantly to replenish your skin, blood, and organ tissues, it has to physically copy all 3 billion base pairs of that DNA manual.
3 billion letters. I mean, imagine sitting down with an entire 30-volume encyclopedia set and having to copy it out by hand, word for word, perfectly, every single time you need to make a new cell.
It's an insane task. The enzyme responsible for this, DNA polymerase, is remarkably accurate, but it is not infallible. Occasionally, it puts the wrong letter in the sequence. In biology, this typo is called a mutation.
Right, and I feel like we need to clarify the word mutation here because pop culture has completely warped it.
Oh, totally.
We hear mutation and we think of comic book characters getting superpowers or like growing a second head, but the sources outline a process that is so much more mundane and frankly a lot more insidious.
Yeah, no superpowers here. The vast majority of these copying errors happen in regions of the DNA that don't code for critical functions, so the cell just ignores them.
Okay, so a typo in the blank margins of the page.
Exactly. But eventually, statistically, a typo will land right in the middle of a vital instruction. Suddenly, that specific cell is operating with a flawed blueprint.
What happens then?
Well, maybe it now produces a crucial enzyme just a little bit slower. Maybe its waste packaging system becomes slightly less efficient. It doesn't instantly die, but it becomes sluggish.
So it's still working, just poorly.
Right. And over decades, millions of these tiny mutations accumulate across your trillions of cells, dragging down the overall metabolic efficiency of the entire organism.
But the typos in the middle of the manual aren't even the biggest issue. It is what happens at the very edges of the DNA strands.
Yes, the telomeres.
Right. The research focuses heavily on telomeres. And the classic analogy everyone uses is the plastic tip at the end of a shoelace.
It's a common analogy, but we really need to look closer at what those plastic tips actually are. Okay. Your DNA is organized into chromosomes. Because DNA is linear, the very ends of these strands are vulnerable to fraying or sticking to other chromosomes.
So they need protection.
Telomeres are long sequences of repetitive junk DNA that cap the ends, protecting the critical genetic information further inside.
Okay, but I want to push back on the shoelace metaphor for a second.
Sure.
A shoelace tip degrades because you are stepping on it or tying it aggressively. Why do the tips of our DNA degrade? What is actually physically shortening them?
That comes down to a mechanical flaw in how cells divide, known as the end replication problem.
The end replication problem, what is that?
So the molecular machinery that copies the DNA strand requires a tiny primer to latch onto. Because it has to sit on the very edge of the strand to start copying, it physically cannot copy the very last segment beneath it.
Oh, I see.
It's like a painter backing themselves into a corner. They can't paint the floor they're standing on.
Right, because their feet are in the way.
Exactly. As a result, with every single cell division, a small piece of the telomere is left uncopied and is permanently lost.
Wow. So there is a built-in countdown clock. Every time the cell replenishes itself, the protective cap gets shaved down a little more.
Yes.
So what happens when the cap finally runs out, like when the cell divides so many times that the telomere is completely gone?
This is where the biology gets fascinating and a bit terrifying.
Okay, I'm ready.
When the telomere becomes critically short, the raw, unprotected end of the DNA strand is suddenly exposed. The cell's internal sensors detect this exposed end and immediately panic.
Panic. The cell panics.
Completely. It mistakes this bare end for a catastrophic double-strand DNA break. It assumes its genome has been shattered.
Oh, so it thinks it's fatally wounded, so it triggers an emergency protocol.
Exactly. It activates a powerful tumor suppressor protein called P53, which slams the emergency brake on the cell cycle. The cell permanently shuts down its ability to divide.
It just stops.
It enters a state known as cellular senescence. It essentially locks its own doors and refuses to ever replicate again.
Which directly explains why our macroscopic bodies change. If a large percentage of your skin cells hit that telomere limit and enter senescence, they can no longer divide to create fresh, plump skin cells.
That is the literal mechanical reason older skin loses elasticity and becomes paper thin. The fresh troops physically cannot be manufactured anymore.
The renewal rate drops below the degradation rate. The tissues cannot regenerate.
Right.
But wait, let me make sure I'm following the logic of the system here. If the cell realizes its DNA is exposed and it pulls the emergency brake and enters senescence, shouldn't it just trigger self-destruction?
I would think so.
Like, shouldn't it just politely die and let the immune system sweep it away to make room for a functional cell?
Well, in a youthful, optimal system, they often do. But as the entire body ages, this clearance system fails. And this leads us to one of the most destructive hallmarks of aging. The accumulation of senescent cells that simply refuse to die.
The zombie workforce. This concept is absolutely wild. The cell cannot divide, it cannot perform its factory duties, but instead of clearing out, it just sits there in the tissue.
Yep, just taking up space.
I imagine these senescent cells like a group of highly disgruntled, retired workers who refuse to leave the factory floor. They aren't doing any work, they are taking up valuable physical space, and they're constantly complaining, creating a completely toxic environment for the younger workers trying to do their jobs.
That is painfully accurate. And the toxic environment isn't just a metaphor. Senescent cells undergo a massive shift in their behavior, known as the senescence-associated secretory phenotype, or SASP.
Okay, what are they doing?
They don't just sit quietly. They actively secrete a highly corrosive cocktail of inflammatory cytokines, immune modulators, and tissue-degrading enzymes into the surrounding area. They are chemically screaming at their neighbors.
Screaming? Why are they doing that? What is the biological purpose of screaming?
Originally, in a young body, that signal is meant to alert the immune system. It's a localized flare gun saying, I am damaged, come destroy me and start healing this tissue.
Oh, so it's calling for help.
Exactly. But as we age, hundreds of thousands of these zombie cells accumulate. The sheer volume of these inflammatory distress signals creates a state of chronic systemic inflammation throughout the entire body. It is often referred to as inflammaging.
Inflammaging. Wow. And the really terrifying part of the research is that this corrosive cocktail actually melts the tissue around the zombie cell, doesn't it?
It does.
It can physically damage healthy neighboring cells and force them to become senescent too. It's like a localized infection of aging.
We call that paracrine senescence. The zombie cells actively drag their healthy neighbors down with them. Now, you should be asking, where is the immune system in all of this?
Yes. If the city's waste management and security forces are designed to clear away debris, why are they letting these toxic complaining retirees ruin the factory floor?
Because the immune system is made of cells, too.
Oh,
Of course. And those immune cells are subject to the exact same telomere shortening, DNA mutations, and ROS damage as everything else. We call this immunosenescence.
so the cops are getting old too.
Exactly. Your immune cells become sluggish and exhausted. The thymus gland, which trains your T cells, physically shrinks and turns to fat as you age.
It turns to fat. That's crazy.
Yeah, it literally degrades. The macrophages lose their ability to precisely identify threats, so the immune system simply ignores the senescent cells.
It is a catastrophic vicious cycle. The zombie cells are creating massive inflammation, which damages the surrounding tissue. The tissue begs for the immune system to help, but the immune system is too tired and mutated to clear out the zombies.
Exactly.
So the zombies pile up, creating even more inflammation, which exhausts the immune system even further.
And this chronic inflammation is the spark that ignites almost every major age-related disease. It creates the perfect environment for plaque to form in the arteries, for joint cartilage to degrade, and for internal cellular machinery to break down completely. We see this acutely in the failing mitochondria.
All right, the power plants. We talk about how they produce the reactive oxygen species, the exhaust fumes, but how do they themselves fail over time?
The mitochondria are unique because they actually have their own separate circular DNA, completely distinct from the DNA in the nucleus.
Okay, separate DNA.
And because this mitochondrial DNA is located physically right next to the site where the volatile ROS molecules are generated, it takes a massive beating.
Oh, because it's right next to the exhaust pipe.
Precisely. As the mitochondrial DNA mutates, the power plant's internal machinery degrades. The electron transport chain, which generates the ATP, becomes leaky.
Meaning it produces less actual energy and leaks even more toxic ROS exhaust into the cell.
Exactly. It is a dual failure. When an older adult experiences deep, persistent physical fatigue or a loss of muscle stamina, it is not a psychological state.
It's physical.
Very much so.
Oh.
It is the macroscopic symptom of trillions of microscopic power generators simultaneously dimming their energy output.
And without energy, the factory can't manage its products.
Well,
Which brings us to the proteins.
right, the building blocks.
The cells are constantly manufacturing proteins to build muscle, transport oxygen, and facilitate chemical reactions. But these proteins have to be folded into very specific, highly complex, three-dimensional shapes to work.
The folding is everything. If a protein is folded incorrectly, it cannot dock with its intended target.
So what makes sure they fold right?
In a healthy cell, there are specialized chaperone proteins that ensure other proteins fold correctly. And there are recycling centers that chop up and dispose of any misfolded mistakes.
But in an aged cell.
Right. In an aged cell, a cell battered by inflammation, starved of ATP by failing mitochondria, and operating on mutated DNA blueprints, the manufacturing process descends into chaos.
The chaperone proteins fail, and the factory starts churning out warped, useless proteins.
Yeah.
And because the recycling centers are out of energy, these misfolded proteins aren't cleared away. They literally pile up inside the cell as microscopic trash.
And this specific mechanism of protein aggregation is the hallmark of devastating neurodegenerative conditions.
Like Alzheimer's.
Exactly. In the brain, these misfolded proteins, like beta amyloid, clump together to form literal plaques that physically suffocate the neurons.
The sources mention a very specific clearance mechanism for this brain trash that I want to highlight because it blew my mind. The glymphatic system.
Oh, the glymphatic system is fascinating.
Right. The brain is highly metabolically active, producing a massive amount of protein waste, but it doesn't have the same lymphatic drainage system as the rest of the body.
No, it has its own distinct system.
Yeah.
It relies on the glymphatic system, which is profoundly tied to our sleep cycles.
Okay, so when you go into deep sleep, the actual support cells in your brain, the astrocytes, physically shrink.
Did you do?
They reduce their volume, which opens up the spaces between the brain cells. This allows cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and literally power wash the misfolded proteins and metabolic trash out of your brain.
It's an incredible cleaning cycle. But as we age, sleep architecture fragments. We get less deep, restorative sleep.
But the washing machine doesn't run.
Right. The power washing system doesn't run as long or as effectively, allowing those toxic plaques to accumulate faster.
Okay, I want to pull all of this together and take a massive step back.
Sure, let's look at the big picture.
We have just outlined a deeply interconnected systemic collapse of the human body. We have DNA typos accumulating, telomeres grinding down and triggering emergency brakes, toxic zombie cells melting their neighbors,
The immune system going blind.
the power generators leaking poison, and the brain filling up with protein trash. It is horrifyingly complex.
It is a lot to take in.
If you look at the sheer genius required to evolve the human body in the first place, a biological machine that can invent language, split the atom, and write symphonies, why in the world didn't evolution just design a better cleanup crew?
That's the million-dollar question.
If we can evolve an eye that can process light into image, why did nature design us to fall apart so miserably?
To understand that, we have to strip away our human bias and look at the brutal pragmatism of natural selection. Evolution is not a benevolent engineer trying to design a perfect, immortal organism. Evolution is a ruthless, hyper-efficient game of resource economics.
The biological economics. Explain how that math works.
Natural selection only scores you on 3 metrics: survival, reproduction, and the passing on of genetic material. That's it.
Nothing else matters.
Historically, over millions of years of evolution in the wild, virtually no animal lived long enough to experience old age. If you were a small mammal or an early hominid on the savanna, your environment was inherently lethal.
Everything wanted to kill you?
You died from predators, starvation, hypothermia, or a simple bacterial infection from a scratch.
You didn't live long enough for your telomeres to wear down because predator got you first.
Precisely. Therefore, any biological energy spent building a flawless repair system meant to last centuries would be completely wasted.
Because you'd be dead anyway.
Right. We refer to this as the disposable soma theory. The organism only has a finite amount of energy derived from food. It has to choose. Do I invest this energy into maintaining my body, the soma, perfectly forever, or do I invest it into growing quickly and reproducing?
But let me challenge that.
Go ahead.
If I'm an organism that invests the energy to be immortal, I can reproduce hundreds of times over centuries. Doesn't natural selection favor the immortal being because it absolutely crushes the numbers game?
It sounds mathematically sound, but the lethality of the environment ruins the equation. Imagine you spend massive biological resources building a 500-year repair system.
Yeah.
You delay reproduction to build a stronger body. But the environment is so dangerous that an apex predator is statistically guaranteed to kill you by year 30 anyway.
Oh.
Your 500-year investment was entirely wasted and you die before passing on those genes. Meanwhile, a different organism invests zero energy in long-term repair, reproduces frantically at year 2, gets eaten at year 3, but has already passed on its genes.
Wow.
Evolution heavily favors the second strategy.
It's like buying a massively expensive 100-year extended warranty on a cheap drone that you are mathematically guaranteed to crash into the ocean next week.
That is a perfect analogy.
It's an idiotic allocation of resources.
The biological investment simply doesn't pay off. We even see this proven in nature when we compare different species. Take a field mouse. It lives entirely on the ground, surrounded by predators. It lives for about 2 years.
Because it just gets eaten.
Right. Now, a bat is roughly the same size as a mouse, but it can fly. Flight removes it from most terrestrial predation.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because its environment is less instantly lethal, evolution allowed the bat to invest more energy in DNA repair, and some bats live for 30 or 40 years.
Because the warranty actually makes sense for the bat.
Exactly. But for humans, evolution only invested enough energy into our repair systems to get us through reproductive age, and perhaps a few decades beyond to help raise offspring.
And then it just abandons us.
It relies on the good enough principle. The city maintenance crews are just good enough to keep the factories running until the next generation takes over. After that, evolutionary pressure drops to absolute zero.
The sources mention a concept here called antagonistic pleiotropy, which makes this even darker.
It really does.
The idea is that some of the exact genes that make us strong and healthy when we are young actively destroy us when we are old.
It is the ultimate evolutionary trade-off. Take a biological pathway that promotes rapid, aggressive cell growth. In youth, this is fantastic. It helps you grow strong bones, heal wounds instantly, and reach reproductive age quickly.
Right.
But in old age, when your DNA is heavily mutated, that exact same pathway promoting aggressive cell growth can drive the formation of cancer.
Oh, wow.
Evolution happily selected for that gene because the benefit in youth guaranteed reproduction, completely ignoring the lethal cost it would exact at age 70.
Biologically speaking, once we reproduce, we are flying without a safety net. Evolution has abandoned us. But here is the massive variable. Humans have completely rewritten the rules of the environment. We don't live on the savannah anymore. We don't get eaten by tigers.
No, we don't.
We developed agriculture to conquer starvation. We invented antibiotics to neutralize the infections that used to wipe out entire villages.
Yeah.
We built modern civilization.
We removed the lethality of the environment, allowing massive portions of our population to live decades past our evolutionary expiration date.
So we're basically ghosts in the machine.
We are experiencing the biological decay that nature never expected us to survive long enough to see.
So if natural selection refuses to invest in our long-term maintenance, can human science step in and fix the 0.001% margin of error? Can we override the system?
That is the big debate right now.
This leads right into the massive debate happening in gerontology, the study of aging. The sources outline two competing frameworks, Theory A and Theory B. Let's break down how scientists are trying to solve this.
So Theory A is heavily focused on what we've spent most of our time discussing, damage accumulation.
Okay, the rust.
Right. It views the body purely as a machine that suffers unavoidable wear and tear. Aging is the passive result of ROS molecules tearing up cell walls, DNA mutations piling up, and the 99.999% repair rate leaving a mess behind.
So what's the solution under Theory A?
If Theory A is entirely correct, curing aging requires inventing nanotechnologies or enzymes that can perfectly sweep through the body and physically repair that microscopic damage.
It's treating aging as an engineering problem. You just need better mechanics to fix the rusty pipes.
Exactly. But Theory B views the process very differently.
How so?
Theory B suggests that aging is, at least in part, actively programmed. It argues that there are deeply embedded epigenetic clocks and genetic pathways that intentionally downregulate our repair systems as we get older.
Intentionally.
Yes. Under this theory, aging isn't just passive rust. It's a built-in self-destruct sequence designed by evolution to clear out the old generation and free up resources for the young.
Wow. But the data actually points to a mixture of both, doesn't it? We definitely take a beating from the physical wear and tear, but things like the epigenetic clock suggest the body is also actively shifting its operating system to a less efficient mode as time goes on.
Yeah, the scientific consensus is definitely converging on this synthesis. We are accumulating physical trash, but the factory managers are also purposefully turning down the power to the recycling centers based on a biological timer.
So knowing the sheer scale of the damage, the failure of the maintenance crews, and the abandonment by evolution, what can we actually do about it right now?
Good question.
Because the sources are explicit that today there is no magic pill, no proven medical intervention that can stop or reverse human aging entirely.
Oh, yeah.
But they do emphasize how much control we actually have over the rate of decay. And I want to relate this directly to you, the listener, and your daily life. Because the most effective anti-aging interventions we have right now sound painfully mundane, but their mechanisms are profound.
The medical advice is universally known, but rarely understood at the cellular level.
Exactly. We hear, eat vegetables, exercise, sleep 8 hours, don't smoke. It feels like a lecture.
It really does.
But when you recontextualize those actions through the mechanics we just discussed, they become strategic interventions in a microscopic war. When you choose not to smoke, you aren't just being healthy, you are actively preventing millions of volatile ROS molecules from entering your bloodstream and literally severing your DNA.
And when you prioritize sleep, as we discussed, you are manually activating the glymphatic system, physically opening the channels in your brain to wash out the misfolded proteins before they can form toxic plaques.
And exercise. The cellular mechanics of exercise are fascinating. It's not just about burning calories. Exercise induces a very specific temporary state of physical stress on your cells.
It is a concept called mitohormesis.
Mitohormesis. Tell us about that.
By stressing the body, you are forcing the cellular factories to adapt. The temporary energy demand forces the cells to break down old, leaky mitochondria and build fresh, highly efficient power plants.
So you are actively forcing the factory to upgrade its infrastructure.
Exactly. Furthermore, intermittent fasting or a deeply nutrient-rich diet triggers a process called autophagy.
Autophagy. The cell literally eating itself.
When the cell is slightly deprived of immediate nutrients, it goes looking for energy internally. It starts hunting down the misfolded proteins, the damaged organelles, and the metabolic trash piling up on the factory floor and breaks them down for spare parts.
Wow.
You are starving the cell just enough to force it to clean its own house.
By engaging in these lifestyle interventions, you are actively manipulating the damage versus repair equation. You are minimizing the external damage and giving the internal maintenance crews the optimal environment to keep their repair rate as close to 99.999% as possible.
You are slowing down the compounding interest of decay.
It is a remarkable level of control, but it is still fundamentally a delaying tactic, isn't it?
Yeah, the biological damage is still accumulating, just at a slower rate.
The ultimate question is what happens when experimental gerontology matures from delaying aging to actively reversing it?
The frontier.
Right. The research points out that scientists have already achieved things in the lab that sound like pure science fiction. They have significantly extended the lifespans of model organisms like nematode worms, fruit flies, and mice.
We are seeing interventions on multiple fronts. For example, researchers are developing a class of drugs known as senolytics.
Senolytics, how do those work?
Remember the zombie cells, the senescent cells that secrete inflammatory acid.
Hard to forget.
Senolytic drugs are engineered to specifically identify those toxic cells and force them to undergo apoptosis-programmed cell death.
They are deploying a highly targeted SWAT team to forcibly remove the disgruntled retired workers from the factory floor, instantly dropping the systemic inflammation levels in the tissue.
Exactly. And the results in mice are staggering. When you clear senescent cells from an old mouse, its fur grows back thicker, its kidney function improves, and its physical stamina rebounds.
That's incredible.
They are also experimenting with telomerase therapy, introducing the enzyme that can rebuild the plastic tips on the shoelaces, allowing cells to safely divide again without triggering the emergency brake.
But the absolute peak of this research has to be cellular reprogramming, the Yamanaka factors.
Oh, the Yamanaka factors. Discovered by Shinya Yamanaka, these are 4 specific transcription factors, proteins that control gene expression.
Okay.
If you introduce these 4 factors into a highly aged, heavily degraded adult cell, they essentially wipe the cell's epigenetic memory clean.
They wipe the memory.
They reprogram the cell back to a state of pluripotency, similar to an embryonic stem cell.
It is the biological equivalent of performing a factory reset on a smartphone. The cell literally forgets that it is old, and its internal machinery reverts to a youthful state.
It proves that the fundamental blueprint for youth is still buried inside the DNA of an old cell. It's just covered in epigenetic rust.
Wow.
But the massive hurdle we face is translation. A mouse is not a human. A mouse has a fraction of our lifespan and a completely different tumor suppression biology.
Right.
If you run a cellular reprogramming protocol indiscriminately in a human, you might rejuvenate the tissue, but you might also strip away the cell's identity entirely, leading to massive, unregulated growth.
You risk trading aging for catastrophic cancer. The balance is unbelievably delicate. But the speed of the research is compounding. We are mapping the exact molecular pathways of the destruction. We have shifted the human perspective from treating aging as an inevitable mystical curse to viewing it as an incredibly complex but ultimately solvable engineering failure.
We really have.
To distill all of this deeply complex biology into a single cohesive framework, we can summarize the entire life cycle of the human body as an equation of damage and repair.
It all comes down to the math.
When you are young, repair is greater than damage. The maintenance crews outpace the structural failures. The 37 trillion factories operate seamlessly.
Right.
As you age, repair becomes roughly equal to damage. The clues start slowing down, the telomeres fray, the 0.001% of unrepaired errors starts to aggressively compound, and the signs of systemic infrastructure strain become visible.
Yep, cracks in the city.
And in old age, damage vastly outpaces repair. The zombie cells pile up, the mitochondria leak toxic exhaust, the immune system goes blind, and the organs slowly lose their functional capacity.
Living inherently creates the damage, and the biological repair systems were never designed to be perfect, only sufficient. Over the span of decades, that tiny margin of accumulated damage fundamentally alters the organism. That is the mechanical reality of why we age.
I want to thank you for taking this deep dive with us, venturing into the microscopic, violent, and miraculous world of your own cells. It changes how you view a simple twisted ankle or a night of bad sleep.
It really gives you a new appreciation for the body.
It does. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final, deeply provocative thought derived from the implications of this research.
Let's hear it.
Natural selection designed our repair systems to be just good enough. It designed us to eventually fall apart because it assumed the lethal brutality of the wild environment would kill us early anyway. It refused to invest the biological resources to make us immortal.
Because it didn't have to.
But modern civilization has completely conquered the wild. We have removed ourselves from the savanna and the food chain.
We have.
If human science, whether through senolytics or telomerase therapies or epigenetic reprogramming, finally figures out how to step in and fix that last fraction of a percent of cellular damage, we will not just be curing aging.
No, we won't.
We will be fundamentally overriding the rules of natural selection that have governed the life and death of every single organism on this planet since the first cell divided in the primordial soup.
It's a staggering thought.
We built the city. We are learning how to manually upgrade the maintenance crews. The only question left is, what happens to humanity when we finally conquer the clock?